Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and back once again for more listener questions. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Daryl won't let me go home. He's insisting we keep talking about the World Cup for at least another, 6 weeks, you said?
I will let you go to Omaha, and I'll let you go to Kansas City, and I'll let you go to Richmond and Virginia Beach and all over the Midwest and then Atlanta.
But then right back to the office, right?
Then right back to the office. So that's what we're talking about, right? We may have some new listeners who found us for the World Cup, and they're wondering, do I keep listening to this show? Or do I just go back to listening to my other shows?
I'm biased, but I would say yes.
Yes.
Ideally, keep listening.
I'm also biased, but I say stick with us.
Okay.
So this is the reason part of the reason we're doing our World Cup listener question shows is to bask in the afterglow of World Cup 2018.
Yes.
Address some listener questions about what happened during the tournament. But also just to let you know, we are still going to be publishing shows. We're going to keep rolling all the way into the start of the Premier League season and the Bundesliga season where all the Americans will be playing. All that is coming the rest of the year. Total Soccer Show never sleeps.
Never. Except when we're in the office, and then Daryl, I think, allows me brief moments of sleep. Then it's right back to recording.
We sleep between recordings.
There we go.
Yeah, and then we just drink some coffee and we go again. You ready for today's listener questions?
Am I?
All right, we got about 9 or 10. Let's start with Russell Varner's question. It's a big question. What will be the long-term legacy of this World Cup?
Sure. VAR is, I think, one of the biggest ones that will come out of this tournament. This will be the tournament where VAR was tested.
Yep.
I think it succeeded. That's my opinion. Other people may disagree, but I think we have not seen the last of VAR by any stretch of the imagination. I
agree. So I made notes for these questions. I wrote down the exact same thing. The legacy of this World Cup is the evidence that VAR works.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that it's going to be popular with everybody. There are a lot of people, for example, upset about the Perisic handball being given as a penalty in the World Cup final. But I think when you have the understanding of what the system is and you just think of it as it gives the referee a second look, and you also understand that video doesn't mean that every decision is guaranteed to be correct. It just means the referee gets several looks at it before making his somewhat subjective decision. VAR is a success.
True.
Yeah?
But I think it's an evolving success. That's what it's supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be, this is it, this is how it's going to be forever. I think we'll continue to see it fine-tuned in the way they approach it and how they utilize it. That will change. I think one thing that I would like to see changed is the explanation of VAR and how it's being used consistently, and the reasons why it doesn't get used in certain instances.
So just on broadcast, you mean? You would like to see it better explained? Yeah.
Yeah, but I still think
it's your game, Dr. Joe.
True. But I still think there's moments, like we didn't mention this, they talked about it on Football Weekly from The Guardian, the moment of Ronaldo thinking there was a chance he might get a red card in the Iran game when it looked like maybe he'd thrown an elbow. Just that moment alone of like, oh boy, VAR has added drama to this tournament. I think you'll have those moments that will keep people wanting VAR to be involved.
All right, here's a big shout. Will it change the game? Will it change the game of soccer? Because, for example, more penalties than ever were awarded because VAR either caught everything or gave the referee at least a second look at everything. So I would argue it does change the game for that reason, that more penalties get awarded. Even if they don't get awarded, it changes the game in that defenders will stop doing things that they used to get away with.
That's a key one for me.
Because now they're more scared that they won't get away with it and they'll get a card or a penalty kick or something.
4 red cards in this tournament. I do not have the numbers off the top of my head. I'm going to go ahead and assume that is the fewest number of red cards in a tournament in a good long while.
And you think that's almost like because people knew they were being extra policed?
Yeah.
It's almost like they had CCTV cameras on them at all times. They were more scared to do things.
Yeah, I mean, if you know that any sort of violent conduct is up for review and probably will be caught, I mean, there were moments that were missed. There were some foot stomping and some little moments here and there. But for the most part, I think it keeps you from doing anything off the ball that you think you might otherwise get away with. And especially, I think, prevents people to some degree from embellishing on contact that was there and sort of trying to sell something that did. Like, you're never going to have that Rivaldo moment again of the ball popping up and then him acting like he'd been punched in the head.
Because he knows that this can be rewatched, right? Because he knows that you can't just sell it in the moment and get away with it. It's going to be reviewed, rewatched, and get a second look. How about the idea that players who know this thing about VAR will catch them and just know that it just means you have to add some extra finesse? And I'm thinking about Diego Costa, who kicked, I think it was against Iran, kicked a goalkeeper as he was turning away. Do you remember this? Like tread on his toes as he was turning away.
Oh yeah,
and then I'm also thinking of the Serbian player, I believe, who swiped someone's face but did it as he was turning. So it just means that you can't do blatant things like an off-the-ball punch in the face, but you can do a thing where if you pretend you're like turning in a different direction and just so happen to swipe someone, then there's more chance you'll get away with it in terms of it not being a red card.
But
maybe
that was
just
reviewed.
I mean, and he only got a yellow.
But see, I would disagree with you because I think that was a correct usage. I don't think he was trying to get away with something. I genuinely think he put his hand up because he was turning. Costa, I'm with you. I think that one he definitely meant to do that. I mean, go back to the Portugal game when he fouls two people in scoring a goal. Like Diego Costa's going to Diego Costa. His game is not going to change.
I guess he was doing this pre-VAR now, right? He was doing the sneaky, like walking the line of what's a foul and what's riling someone up. All right,
that's what he does best.
I withdraw my suggestion.
The other things I think will be the long-term legacy. I do think, barring some sort of massive like downward trajectory, I think this will be seen as the tournament where Kylian Mbappe arrived. I know lots of folks out there are going to say the Champions League when he was playing with Monaco would be a time when he arrived, maybe last season with PSG. But I think
not
this is
in
the one,
mainstream,
no,
right? Yeah,
this is that tournament, and I also think. Obviously, it's the tournament where France got their second star, but I think that's more significant than just them winning the World Cup again. It does move them to that next level of a team that's won it multiple times. And I think about teams of
twice as many times as England now.
Yeah, there you go. See, exactly. Get it together, England. But like you think about like teams of their era and what they kind of stood for and how they cemented themselves in our memory. Like the one that most readily comes to mind would be Spain from 2008 to 2012. Like that is a team that just kept winning, and you think of Spain as this juggernaut. We've talked about it before in tournaments past. They were like the serial chokers who could never get it together. Yeah. But now they've kind of changed the way you see them. I think getting a second star really does do that for France. It kind of cements them as, it sounds silly to say like a football nation because obviously they are, but it just cements them as one of those teams that's like, oh boy, we got to play France. This is a big deal.
I think that's true. I think also if you now look at it, it's not just that they got to Euro 2016 final at home and then messed it up. No, it's they got to Euro 2016 final, then 2 years later they won the World Cup. And I think part of the legacy here is that we start to see France as maybe even some sort of dynastic team. Yeah. Because it was the second or joint second.
That was the phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
Youngest at the World Cup. So the other thing is maybe it proves that you can win the World Cup with kids.
Well, we'll talk about... Yes, you definitely can win it with kids. We'll talk about what that means for France.
Centre-backs in their early 20s. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're talented. They're pretty good. They're pretty good, that France team.
Why are we going to be talking about this later?
Oh, maybe we'll get to like teams winning the World Cup again, or
I see.
What happens after you win the World Cup.
I'm also optimistic that the legacy of this World Cup is that maybe it's worth having a system. Yeah, right? It's worth a team having a system and sticking to it. Like France went deep doing that, despite having all this talent. The key thing was that they had a sort of conservative defensive system that allowed them to not get scored on too many times. England had a system and went to the semi-final, first time ever. Argentina could not agree on a system and had a disaster of a tournament. Yeah. I think there's the evidence there that systems work better than star players.
I don't disagree, but I'm conflicted about that because I had the same idea, but then I was thinking, well, Belgium kind of kept changing it and adjusting it as the tournament went on.
But they had a system to change and adjust, and it was the manager in charge of tweaking it, right?
Would you say the same then for Croatia, that they had a system and they just tweaked it?
Yeah, but as opposed to Belgium just going, all right, that Lukaku's a good player, that Hazard's a good dribbler. Go on, lads.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. But I agree. But has that ever been the case? Has there ever been a team that was like that one guy get it done? Because I know there's teams that we remember as being the one-player teams, but I don't know if that's ever been the case that, like, yep, just put that star out there and he'll get it done.
I guess it's more just a thing that I like, and there's lots of evidence for it at this World Cup.
Gotcha.
So I don't think that's necessarily a long-term legacy of this World Cup.
I do want there to be one team that was just like, just give the ball to him and he'll win.
I mean, people would argue Diego Maradona, 1986 Argentina, that it was really just all set up for him to go at people.
Yeah, this is my genuine ignorance here, because I can't claim to have as much familiarity as probably many people with the 1986 World Cup. I was 2. And quite frankly, I don't really like Diego Maradona, so that factors into my...
You haven't even met him.
That is true, and I aim to keep it that way.
Any other long-term legacies of the World Cup?
Those are the big ones that I had.
All right, next question then.
Sure.
Craig Muir asks, should we bring back the golden goal for the next World Cup?
No. Next question, Jonathan. No, okay, yeah.
Let's give this question its due. So the golden goal, for people who don't know, is when you go to extra time. The rule, briefly, up until I believe 2002, was that if you score first in extra time, the game is over. It's called the golden goal. The game is just finished because you scored the winner. I don't think it added anything.
Didn't they only have it in like one tournament?
I think maybe only 2002. I don't know if it was at 98 or not. I can't remember. But once it happened, you're robbed of the drama of the team trying to scramble back to get the equaliser, right? So there's
that's
there's
not why I
point
say
in
no,
the golden
though.
goal. So what do you say no?
Because as I recall, it just made everybody ultra defensive. Because then you don't want to be eliminated on the golden goal, so you're more content to sit back and be ultra defensive.
So you'd rather just go straight to penalties than concede a golden goal.
And even that's not ultra defensive of like sit back and then look to break on the counter. That's still like sit back and maybe one player will break on the counter and try something on an individual level.
Yeah, so it really made for not exciting extra times, at least in my memory.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it seems like such a great idea and such like just a super thing that's going to motivate everybody, and instead it really had the opposite effect.
I think it's a misunderstanding of how humans calculate risk reward.
Yeah.
It's what golden goal is.
Yes.
But thank you for asking, Craig, because I hadn't thought about golden goal in a good old while.
I do like the idea of golden goal with like almost a Fortnite scenario where like the area you're in just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So like the goals slowly move together, and then you have to score. Like then it really brings you together. You really got to try something.
I've not played Fortnite, but how about Star Wars Trash Compactor?
Okay, perfect.
Next question.
Sure, Jonathan Maciel Penny. Did you see any tactical trends at this World Cup?
Oh well, we mentioned the systems over stars.
Yeah.
A lot of those were quite conservative systems, like France asking Paul Pogba to sit deep instead of go forward. Not a great deal of really aggressive pressing, with Croatia sometimes being the counter-example. So that's one trend. Another trend would be man-marking the playmaker, right? Carlos Vela man-marked Toni Kroos for Germany. Senegal man-marked Gregor Krychowiak against Poland. That was really successful. But in terms of actual formations, we did see a lot of tactical trends at this World Cup. I want to preface this by saying these may not be new. It may just be this is the first time that we've paid such close, detailed attention to a tournament, so maybe it's the first time we spotted them.
Yeah.
Is that fair? You co-sign that?
Yeah, I would. But I would say I was surprised by how often we saw teams shift their actual formation based on what they were doing. Because I know that it's been like, oh, defensively, like we sit back and we do this. But I've never seen a team be like, oh, it's so clearly a 4-1-4-1 when they're attacking, and it is so clearly for Croatia, say, a 4-3-2-1 when defending. Or the Belgium thing that we talked about. But just seeing how teams...
I think that has always existed.
Yeah.
The just changing like a 4-1-4-1 to a 4-3-3 type thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's always been around. But the Belgium thing you're talking about, I think that is at least, if not entirely new, then definitely innovative and fresh.
Okay.
Yeah?
Why do you say that?
Because if we're talking about the same thing, I'm not even sure that we are, we're talking about Roberto Martinez literally having a shape that isn't even symmetrical. It just changes based on the situation, and literally players have different positions, right? Because with the 4-1-4-1, 4-3-3 thing we're talking about, you're still essentially a right-sided player, right? You're just in a different spot. Whereas he had, say, Nacer Chadli playing left mid, but then also centre mid when the thing would shift. So it was a bigger asymmetrical shift than I've ever seen a team do.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the two things that I hold on to there as like some hesitation is that like, yeah, it's left mid to center mid, but it's to left center mid in a midfield three.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think we had somebody point out is that it's somewhat reminiscent of what Pep Guardiola had Man City doing at times, where it was like wing backs going centrally and then center backs going wide. So I mean, but I think I'm still with you that like that was an innovation that at least I'll say like other people had said they had seen, I had not, and so to me that was definitely pretty fascinating to watch.
I certainly hadn't seen Roberto Martinez do it. Let's put it that way.
No, and then going back to or maybe combining them both, but I think a lot of this though for me was a crystallizing moment in the importance of players understanding what is being asked of them. And I know, again, that sounds a little bit purred happily, but I think about the teams that we talked about. We talked about on the last show the importance of Casemiro for Brazil, and how he does so much stuff that you probably don't notice because it's not on the ball, he's not scoring goals, but the way he
closes down a lane that doesn't get passed to, so therefore you don't even see it. But he prevented a thing from happening. But he's the butterfly that flapped his wings.
Yeah, and again, that might seem like common sense, but just the how some players are able to do it as instinct. That Marcelo has gone forward, I shift over to the left, but now Marcelo's dropped and he's gone here, so I'm going to move there. And just the ability to reposition on the fly. N'Golo Kante, probably the best in the world at doing that from a holding midfielder, defensive midfielder standpoint. That to me was not necessarily an innovation, but it was just a trend, maybe because it's not one that I had really paid attention to before, but the importance of individual players that then allows their teammates to have a little bit more freedom. That was one that I hadn't really thought about heading into this tournament.
Blaise Matuidi, maybe the best example, the role he did for France, which was theoretically left winger, but also centre mid, but also in certain games like the Peru game, make sure you mark the Peruvian right back. There's a lot of assignments like that we know noticed that were really interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And then another one that, like, going back to the 4-3-2-1 for a moment for Croatia, I found that one, this is like my personal feeling, is that I found that one especially interesting because, like, we had a question a long time ago about, like, will the libero ever come back? That, like, deep-lying sweeper who can drive forward with the ball.
Yeah.
And the idea, I think, that we settled upon was that it had kind of been replaced by a holding midfielder, that you basically put the libero in front of the defense, and now they're doing that same thing. This 4-3-2-1 was really fascinating to me.
Croatia's?
In that they used it basically to block the wings. Like, they pull their wingers back, and they're almost more defensive in line with that defensive midfielder.
So Perisic and Rebic, if you're visualizing.
Thank you. But then it keeps the two more attacking midfielders,
Modric and Rakitic.
Thank you. Central, and that's where you want them. That you don't have them dropping all the way back, and suddenly they're 40 yards away from Mario Mandzukic. It's a clear avenue to play through, and to me, it felt like a sort of step in that direction of now the holding midfielder is actually an attacking midfielder. It just felt like he moved players into different positions than I think I've otherwise seen them stay, and I think it allowed Croatia to have a lot of the attacking success they had.
Interesting. Any other tactical trends? I don't have any more to add.
That's about it for me.
All right. Well, today's show is sponsored by RX Bar. RX Bar is the whole food protein bar that we keep right here in the office.
We literally have a box on the shelf.
We sure do. So
that we purchased, I should add. It was not sent to us.
No.
I went out and bought boxes of RX Bar for the World Cup.
So yeah, we were introduced to RX Bar as an advertiser, but then we've been converted. We've been converted. So the deal with RX Bar is, as I said, a whole food protein bar, but they looked at other protein bars, which are things I used to eat, and called BS on protein bars.
Yep.
I kind of did the same thing when I started looking into what is contained in other protein bars. It's not necessarily good stuff. It's empty protein so they can say it's protein.
Yep.
RX Bar, the reason they make clear that they are whole food ingredients is exactly that. There is no filler.
So that's no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, fillers, as you said. That also means they're gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free.
Yep, absolutely. And the reason we keep them here in the office is sometimes we just need a snack to fill us up, energize us, get us through another World Cup game, that's what we've been doing for the past month, or to get us through another recording without having to go out and buy dinner.
Yep. I mean, and they're filling, but they're not that sort of like, I've eaten a granola bar, but the bottom of it was chocolate, and it had chocolate on top, and it had like chocolate in the middle. It was basically a candy bar.
Yeah, it's just filling enough to, and just wholesome enough to feel like you've eaten something that made sense.
I know I'm not breaking new ground here because it's been joked about by comedians and shows like a million times over, but to me, it's the equivalent of like people saying like a muffin is cake. You're eating cake for breakfast if you have a muffin, especially with one with like stuff on top. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of granola bars. Not the case with RX bars. I feel like at least, and it does feel a little bit like when I look at the things that we do have available to eat, it is the RX bar is the one that I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit okay with myself as opposed to, say, an entire can of Pringles.
Well, so lots of listeners have taken us up on the deal to get 25% off. Nobody so far has been disappointed.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have been very happy. If you would like to get 25% off your first order, you visit rxbar.com/soccer, then you enter the promo code soccer. So rxbar.com/soccer, enter promo code soccer at checkout. You'll get 25% off your first order of RX Bar.
All right. Thank you to RX Bar for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. I intentionally did not put this in the advertisement, but I have a question for you, Daryl.
Uh-oh.
Do you have words, like, are there any words, this is a weird question, are there any words that you just don't like? Like, when someone says them, you're just like, I hate that word.
Not especially, no.
Because I have it with snack. I hate that word so much. I don't know why.
Did I say it?
You said it, and I was just like, ugh. And if you listen back, I went out of my way to not say that word. I don't know why. It drives me crazy. I just don't like it.
Oh, you're very professional for not mentioning it during the...
I figure they wouldn't love that.
Less so for bringing it up straight afterwards. All right, next question.
I figure they wouldn't hate it.
Next question is from Lyle Axelaris. Lyle Axelaris. Lyle wants to know, what language do refs speak? Must they know the language of each team in a game, or is there enough of an international football language that multilingualism is not required? Snack on this question for me, Taylor.
I knew you were going to do it. Our guess, and we should emphasize that this is a guess based on what we've seen and a little bit from talking to people, is that it is primarily English.
My observation is that it's English.
Yeah.
Because we've seen close-ups as the referee is talking to two teams at the World Cup, and the refs speak in English.
Yeah, but it's not English like aviation English, where it has to be fluent English so you can get around any sort of cultural or linguistic issues. I think it is a lot of like, was foul? No. Like, it's a lot of very basic words and phrases and occasional sentences, but I think it is primarily what players go to.
And I think the evidence, I think I've said this before already, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but Spain-Morocco, we saw the referee, I can't remember who the ref was, but he wasn't English, doing the coin flip and everything before kickoff. And he spoke English. He was like, you this way, you with the ball. And he would do the ball motion. And I think it's a lot of just, like you said, very basic phrases, a little bit of gesturing to make sure that things are clear. And in some ways, it prevents long conversations. Yeah. So it just gets things done quickly.
Yeah, because because they shouldn't really be having long conversations. The only time you should be, as the official, in my opinion, having conversations with players is when you're trying to either clearly convey what's happening or tell them, stop it.
Yeah.
No.
But even that is a short English conversation. Yeah. No more.
Yeah. No more cards. That's all it has to be, or gesture to pocket. And that's why I do think also you see so much very clear acting or hand gesturing or indicating. We saw a lot in this World Cup of the referee didn't want to scream from one end of the pitch to the other. I know you're time wasting. Don't do it again. Otherwise, I'm going to give you a card. It's simply enough to point to the wristwatch and then point to the head, and that lets them know. And I think that's a big part of it too. Gestures play a part.
It's point to the head. Think.
I think so. That's what we landed on.
Think about what you're doing. Is it weird that it's English? Do I just assume that English is the second most spoken language around the world without having any stats to back it up, or does it seem accurate to you that a lot of people learn English as their second language?
As their second language?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I genuinely don't. It does feel to me like a lot of people do speak English, and that has been my experience, but it's also maybe my experience because I speak English primarily.
Because it's the only thing you have to go with.
Exactly.
When you go somewhere.
It's not like I'm also like fluent in French and can go that way.
There we go.
And again, that might just be the ugly American, I don't speak enough languages, so other people have to accommodate. Decent chance that's the case.
A lot of English people go with the theory that if you speak English loudly and slowly, people will eventually start speaking English back to you.
Is that not the case?
It's not the case.
Okay.
It's not the case. A lot of people with very bright sunburn take that approach. Next question?
Yeah. Thomas, I'm going to say Pulisic.
All right.
But who knows? Maybe Pulisic. What do you guys think of the yellow card suspension rule in the tournaments? It's dumb. Is it fair or overly harsh? It's overly harsh. Is there a better way to do it? Probably.
You've annotated the question with your own answers.
I'm good.
So I think first, let's lay it out for people. The yellow card rule in tournaments is if you pick up 2 yellow cards in different games, you get suspended for the next game. The only exception being the final, because things get reset when the semi-final starts.
Yep.
Fair to say? I think it's harsh. I think there are so many games in such a short time, and it's such a different, highly competitive mode that you're in, that maybe there's an argument for 3 yellow cards at a World Cup is a suspension.
Yeah, I mean that's one option. I have a weirder one.
All right,
it's not even that weird. It's been talked about a lot. I mean, it is like the sin bin. It's the hockey penalty box.
You can't do that just for the World Cup and not elsewhere, right?
I mean, maybe you don't know. You can experiment places. I mean, wherever they started VAR, start it there, and then see how it goes. Then we'll keep expanding and expanding. Okay. But I think you could do some sort of hybrid because I think if you get a yellow card for frustrating, you tap the ball away, the referee says no more in the first game, and you get a yellow for that. For the rest of the tournament up until the semifinal, you're dreading getting another yellow card. Mm-hmm. I've heard a couple different journalists speculating that a big reason why N'Golo Kante didn't have the best game yesterday was because of that yellow. Now that's a yellow
because he got one early and then he was scared to get a second one during the game,
and that's in the game. Don't get me wrong, but the principle kind of holds of he got it very early in the game. Compare that to the first game of the World Cup. Now for the rest of the World Cup, it's going to alter the way you play because you don't want to put in that tackle. You don't want to go in for that challenge or risk being suspended.
So you're saying sin bin?
Yeah.
All right. So how would it work? What, for example, once there's a foul worthy of what would have been a yellow card, I'm assuming you're going to give a sin bin instead. Yeah. How long is the player in there for?
I don't know. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, probably 10 minutes, I think. Or at least
the team is down to 10 men while that's happening.
Yeah, or maybe that's too strong, but I feel like it needs to be enough time. It needs to be enough time for you to be able to adjust what you're doing, so that the team that has the man advantage is sort of at an advantage, not being oh yeah, that's great, we have an advantage right when the other player comes back on. Probably also has to be policed so you don't have the Senegal moment of the player coming back on to score a goal.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
That's one of the most memorable moments of the World Cup that I forgot to add from yesterday's show was Niang coming on and scoring in that way.
Yeah, and as long as we're updating yesterday's show, the big one that I forgot to mention was players whose transfer value had significantly decreased would be Carlos Sanchez from Colombia. A red card, and then does he get another red card? Does he score an own goal? He concedes a penalty.
He mounted Harry Kane.
There it is, yes. So not a great tournament for him. But I do think that would help, number one, it punishes you in the moment more so than just a yellow card.
Yeah.
It puts your team at a disadvantage and maybe facilitates more attacking play. But then it also, you could almost say like a blue card is what sends you to the sin bin. A yellow card is still a yellow card.
I see.
So at a certain point, you can still get that.
Where's the cutoff for a blue card?
I don't know the answer to that, but this is why I'm not in charge. So this is why we have the guinea pig league to make sense of this.
Well, it's worth letting people know we play 7-a-side a lot, right? Like once a week or so. And in that league, which is very competitive, right? Everybody is there to win at great personal risk.
Yep.
There's a blue card for any slightly rough foul.
Yep.
The ref will give you a blue card. I believe it's 2 minutes.
You got it.
That you have to sit out, and so your team will have 6 players, and the opposition team will have 7 players. And when you're the defending team, that's a panicky moment, right? Because you like always say, "Hey, striker, come back, help defend with us. We just got to see out this 2 minutes." When you're the attacking team, there's a weird pressure of we better make this count, right? Because it's a huge advantage to have. And I wonder if that would play out in 11v10 in more or less the same way.
I think it probably would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what happens in hockey as well. I'm sure we have hockey fans screaming at us for not mentioning that. Yeah, I think it does. And then you still get the short-sighted goals, and that's an amazing moment when that happens.
Do you think a lot of field hockey fans listen to this show?
Oh, my goodness, Daryl. But yes, I like to think that they do. So I really do enjoy that. And then I still think if you keep the cards in place for more serious or egregious fouls, then it does still have the intended purpose of you don't have that one player who's just there to be an enforcer and wreck people.
There we go. All right, you think we've answered that
I hope so.
Successfully?
Yeah.
All right, next question. Wait, what do you think of my idea of 3 yellow cards? Instead of, like, just extending it from 2 yellows to 3 yellows so you've got a bit more leeway. Does that let too many players get too violent? Or does it just give you a bit more leeway so, for example, Casemiro's not suspended and we don't get to see the full Belgium v Brazil?
I don't know is my immediate answer. I think my only hesitation with that one is just like where do you then have the like cards reset rule, and then also does it then let players get away with stuff they shouldn't be getting away with? Because there is an argument to be made that if you are, like going in reckless on a player, like in a game and you get a yellow, and you go in reckless in the next game and you get a yellow, you're recklessly challenging people. You deserve to be suspended.
That's fair.
So like that's where I have a little bit of issue, but I like 3 cards total, or maybe it is like you can get 2 in the group stage, but then that's okay. I guess maybe 2 in the group stage you're suspended, but you can get a 3rd in the next round. I don't know how it works.
All right, so what we're learning is we haven't fully thought this out.
No, I think I got this.
Yeah, okay.
In the group stage, if you get 2, you're still suspended. So if you get 1 of the first game, 1 of the second game, you're suspended for the 3rd.
Okay.
But after the group stage, you can then get a 3rd. So if you, Daryl, got a yellow in the first game, you've played it with it for the next 2, once you get to the knockout round, now you can afford to get 2 cards.
So you don't reset after the group stage, you just up the total.
Yes.
I like it.
All right.
That's a really good idea.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an obvious hole that I haven't thought of.
JT Guads, next question, wants to know, what were some noteworthy examples of players being played out of their natural position in the World Cup, and how did it affect their teams?
Yeah. I think a big one was that Javier Mascherano was playing out of retirement and was instead playing at central midfield for Argentina. That was a big one. It didn't have a very good effect. A legitimate one, I would say, would be Yannick Carrasco for Belgium. Playing left winger, playing as a left wing back, occasional left back. It did not work out that well, as we thought it would not. And that's why you did see changes made so that it wasn't Yannick Carrasco in the final couple games.
It's interesting. So Carrasco on the left and Thomas Meunier on the right? And Meunier is is a right back, right?
Yep.
In the end, he looked a lot more comfortable as a right back playing right wing back than a left winger playing left wing back in Carrasco did. I think it's an interesting natural experiment of which type of position is easier to convert into a wing back.
Yeah, and it goes back to like what I was talking about with like individuals being tasked with specific responsibilities. It can be really difficult because it's not always just get forward in this case, stay defensive in this case, but you've got to be able to observe and react and adapt. And I think you saw moments where Carrasco still had that, I'm an attacker, I'm a left winger, I want to get down, oh shoot, I left that space behind. Whoops.
One obvious one for me is England.
Yep.
Kyle Walker,
right
back, mostly right wing back for Manchester City, playing right centre back. And I think we talked him up and talked him down throughout the tournament, right? There was a lot of times when I said I think it's worth the trade-off because he's so aware when there's an attack on and so quick to get there. And his tackles were kind of precise in a way that they never used to be back when I watched him when he was younger. That he was mostly worth it. And yet, the thing where we saw him get caught out, I think at least twice, were crosses into the box. You could see that he wasn't really a centre-back, right? There was one where he did he foul a Tunisian player to give away that free kick? Put his arm across him, So that was a thing that maybe a more natural centre-back doesn't do. And then wasn't the Croatia's equalising goal, I believe that the Perisic snuck across from Trippier, to Kyle Walker, to Kyle Walker, snuck up on him in a way that maybe a more experienced centre-back that doesn't happen to.
So you don't like Kyle Walker, is what I'm hearing.
This is the weird thing. I do like Kyle Walker at centre-back. I think if England were picking a team, this is the important part actually, if England were picking a team that wanted players that were comfortable on the ball and players with pace, it made sense to make Kyle Walker one of your centre-backs if your other centre-backs didn't have those attributes, right? So he's going to be better in that team, in that shape, in that system than, say, Chris Smalling would have been, who's a more natural centre-back because he's not so good with the ball. And I think that's the interesting thing with England is they had to do a trade-off. To play the system and style with the profile of player that they wanted, they had to do a thing like put Kyle Walker at centre-back.
Yeah.
And it worked. Like, it worked, and England are better than they've been for a long time. But you also saw that doing that with someone slightly out of position, they eventually bumped up against a limitation.
That's true.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I would say, though, that I think it was worth the trade-off. Because I think anytime...
Me too. World Cup semi-final. I'm happy.
Yeah, true. But for me, I think I've talked about this before when I played with the fastest guy I've ever played with, that all our coach did was stick him... It was not you, unfortunately. All our coach did was stick him at midfield, and the first play... that we had the opportunity, booted it long, he ran onto it, and he outran their entire defense. I think they scored, maybe not. But either way, from that point on, the defense is constantly aware of that. And if you flip that around for a second, and if you're an attacker thinking, oh, I've got pace, I can beat this player, there were a couple different instances, forgive me, I can't remember them specifically, but I remember them, of Kyle Walker making up 5 yards or just outrunning that player to get to the ball, and not just getting it and hoofing it out of bounds, but then because he was calm on the ball, settling it, playing it back, keeping possession.
I know exactly what it was.
Which one?
It was when England were chasing the game. It was 1-1 against Tunisia. Going into the final minute, there was a Tunisian counter-attack. Kyle Walker beat, I can't remember the striker, to the ball, got there first, won the ball, and then he and Trippier, I believe, combined to nutmeg someone, then play the ball square.
That's right.
And then England had a whole move, a long passing move that went down the field, won a corner kick. Harry Kane scores that header from the corner kick. So there's the thing where Kyle Walker is 100% worth having as a centre-back.
And I'm confident, but again, I cannot remember the specific one, but I'm confident it happened again in the knockout round. In which game, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Or in one of the knockout games, that is.
And while we're still on England, Raheem Sterling was playing out of position.
This is true.
Raheem Sterling is, for the most part, at least in his successful last couple of seasons for Manchester City, a winger. He is really out wide in a Manchester City team with a lot of the ball, and then he's making some runs in from there and appearing at the far post, or he's making dribbles in from there, getting involved in some 1-2s. For England, this tournament, he was asked to essentially play as a striker. He and Harry Kane were a two-striker pair, and often Harry Kane would drop deep and Sterling was the highest player up there. Sometimes Sterling would come deep and receive the ball, but he was very much, I know he's an attacker, so he's not wildly out of position, but it's not his normal, this is what I've been doing for a couple of years position.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think the result is that maybe Sterling wasn't 100% comfortable.
Yeah, it's true. But I would say, going back to our conversation from the last show, it is also the case that I think being given clear and specific instructions and understanding those instructions, getting them from Gareth Southgate, it let Raheem Sterling have a better game than I do think Yannick Carrasco was given those maybe some instructions, but maybe wasn't necessarily drilled in what he absolutely needed to do his defensive job.
I think that's fair. Anyone else who was out of position?
I mean, there's other ones here and there, like Achraf Hakimi playing as a right back instead of left back. No, he is a right back. He was playing as a left back. Who is it from Mexico?
From Mexico, I don't know. Alvarez played right back, and I think he's more of a defensive midfielder. Yeah. I'm not sure how out of position he was there.
So there's those moments, but there was no major one, in my opinion, that caused major issues aside from the one that we've discussed, except for the one you're about to mention.
So Argentina, when they did that reshuffle, they had the first game when it was essentially Sampaoli's team against Iceland. They had Eduardo Salvio, the right winger for Benfica, playing right back and asked to get forward. I kind of think it worked. I was pro this experiment before the tournament. It got cancelled soon after.
Yeah.
Next game, they go 3 at the back. Tagliafico, the left back.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. That
plays
was bad.
left centre-back, and you could really tell the difference between playing left-back and playing left centre-back. He looks super uncomfortable.
Yep.
And actually, this was the Sampaoli system, right? When he was like, we're doing it my way. Tagliafico's playing left centre-back. It was a disaster.
And it worked so well that he's gone.
It was the Croatia game, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Sampaoli's gone?
Yep.
Officially?
I believe so, as of yesterday. I believe that was made official. I think during the World Cup, so way to bury that one.
All right, before we get to the rest of today's questions.
Yes, sir.
Today's show is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace.
I've heard of them.
Squarespace, the website provider, website host. It is how we host the Total Soccer Show. Website platform, is the correct term for what Squarespace can do for you.
That's right. Squarespace gives you the ability to customize look and feel, settings, products, and more with just a few clicks, which is, as we've been discussing, like more than you can say for a lot of these formations and approaches to the World Cup.
Yeah, Squarespace makes it very easy to take what you think you want your website to look like, then using their really easy to use system, using their templates, you can make it just like that. Very, very easily. It's like being given a roster of very talented players who are all willing to do a job for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like being Deschamps and getting the France team, and Paul Pogba's like, hey, you want me to do some defending? I'm in. Let's go win that World Cup.
Yeah.
That's what Squarespace will do for you when you're building a website.
If you're using like a shopping customization, it's not going to be like, well, I'm usually more of like a stay-at-home customization, but I guess for you, I'll try to be a little bit more adventurous. Like, no, it's going to be like, yep, that's what I do. I'm on it.
Equally helpful, Squarespace's customer service. If you contact them, they will answer any question you have about putting your website together or about how the whole Squarespace thing works.
Which I would have to believe is something that I think managers wish they could have, is just to get on like the phone with Sir Alex Ferguson or somebody established to be like, what should I do? How do I change this?
Like a phone a friend option.
Make this work.
For coaches.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of a game.
Yeah, if you're trying to establish a pressing system, you call Jurgen Klopp and you say, make this happen, please, real fast.
If you would like to build your website with Squarespace, you go to squarespace.com. It is 100% free to get started. Then when you've built it and you like the look of it and you want to launch it, you can use the offer code TSS for 10% off the launch price with squarespace.com.
There we are. So thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode of the program. Now, Dale Grove, I have a question for you from Oswin Taft.
All right.
Oswin says, 4 out of the 5 previous winners all went out in the group stage in the following World Cup. What is your explanation for this trend, and do you think it will happen again?
So my explanation for the trend of World Cup winners going out in the group stage in the next game,
buying himself time,
in the next tournament, is that I think they stick with too many players.
Yep.
I think being a World Cup champion means, especially if the coach sticks around, which isn't always the case, but if the coach sticks around, I think the coach then trusts those players too much because he's been through a whole experience with them. Right?
I would agree.
So the best example I can think of is Marcello Lippi was the Italy coach in 2006. I think he brought back a load of the same players. Like Totti, I think, had retired, but a lot of the same players were brought back for 2010, and they had that terrible performance. Yeah. Same with Spain, won the World Cup in 2010. By 2014, they tried to do a lot of the same thing again, went out in the group stage.
Yeah. And I think the two outliers there would, in my mind, or not outliers, but the two things I would add to that would be like, one, it's not necessarily a problem to stick with the same players if it makes sense. And that's the big one for me, is that like this France team, as we've said before, like we expect them to stay competitive in the Euros, probably in the next World Cup. It's a very young team. But if, say, there is a better left back than Lucas Hernandez, I never really know how to pronounce that in French, so someone please let us know. But either way,
Monsieur Hernandez.
There we go, perfect. I expect that, like, I would expect Deschamps to experiment, to say like, oh, maybe this person's better, maybe this person fits more. And if there is a better option, then
Benjamin Mendy.
Yeah, or maybe better than Benjamin Mendy, who knows? I think I saw somebody tweet, he has, in about an hour of playing, won the Premier League and the World Cup in a single year.
Fine.
So he's doing all right. But
Shark teams.
But I think, so I guess what I'm saying, again, to reiterate, is just that it's not always a problem to stick with the players if that's a justified decision. The other thing I would say is that it's not always the worst case to stick with the same manager, because you can run into that problem of, say, Deschamps leaves, and somebody outside of Zinedine Zidane, he might be the one outlier, comes in and takes over. You can have that problem of like, hey, we're the world champions, man. We're going to do what we do. Yeah. You're the new one here. You're going to like, let's like...
You're the non-world champion in this room.
Yeah, so there's no clear-cut way to succeed after winning, aside from, I think, there's all the stories of the most successful managers who keep hiring new first-team coaches because they want to keep it fresh.
That, right?
He did. I've just already referenced him once this show, so I didn't want to do it again. But yes, he did that. If you keep it fresh, if you keep trying to find out new things and learn new things and experiment with different approaches, then I think that can keep it fresh. But if you just do the same thing and with the same players and expect the same results, the other teams that you're going to face have game planned for that and are going to be set up to deal with it.
Oh, is it? Yeah, because also you might be just too similar to 4 years ago, so teams can be like, all right, we've got you figured out.
And then again, that can go both ways, where we've seen teams that stuck with the same plan and then got found out and were eliminated, and we've seen teams who went the very opposite side and were like, we got to change everything. We're playing a back two, and we're playing 8 strikers. It's going to be totally innovative.
That's what England did, right? Unsuccessful 2014. Yeah. They rethought the whole thing for 2018. That kind of works.
Well, but I'm saying that can work, but it can also be the case that you overthink it because you're so focused on improvising and adapting and evolving that you evolve too much.
Here's an interesting one. Jogi Löw, we mentioned on yesterday's show as maybe one of the underperforming, maybe the most underperforming manager at World Cup 2018. He's keeping his job. Yep. He is in charge at least through, I think, 2020 or 2022.
I think 2022.
Yes, they are happily going to keep him on for another cycle. He is someone I would argue, even though he freshened it up at the Confederations Cup and he brought in new players, maybe he stuck with too many of the guys from the last tournament. And I think the best example might be Manuel Neuer.
Yep.
Hear me out, because I know we slightly disagreed on this, right? That I don't think Manuel Neuer should have gone to the World Cup at all, because he wasn't fit for most of the season since like September. If Neuer didn't have that history with Jogi Löw of being his World Cup winning keeper, I don't think he would have taken that gamble on him, and maybe he shouldn't.
I initially thought about responding by just coming across the table, but I felt like that wouldn't be great audio. No, I agree. I think that, like, hindsight 2020, it's probably the case. That said, I don't think Germany's problems were really that rooted in Manuel Neuer.
No, they weren't, but I think he was an example of being too willing to hold on to something that worked for you in the past, right? When if it was an untested goalkeeper at a World Cup, you wouldn't have been like, this guy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm also genuinely interested to see, this is slightly off topic, but I'm really interested to see, given the chance to freshen the team up, what does Jogi Löw do? Does he just go with like this whole new Confederations Cup generation? Is there going to be a team built around Goretzka? Is there going to be a team with Sané in? Like, how interesting is it going to be watching Jogi Löw try to rebuild his own team over the next couple of years?
Well, that's also a question as to whether or not he will do that. Because
I just assumed.
I want him to, because I think the world is more fun when you have these like figures out there who are so good that it forces everybody else to raise their game. Jogi Löw was in that category in my mind until this tournament. Not to say that he's then fallen way out, but just that it's not even just like maybe bringing Neuer or maybe getting some things wrong. The biggest one was all the reporting about the rifts that had happened. Starting with Leroy Sané and the two different like groups within the locker room. And what if he stops calling one of the groups? What if he what does he have to call an equal amount for everybody to be happy? Does he have to keep listening to what everybody says about player input? I feel like he will figure it out, but I also feel like there's a decent chance that it all blows up again and maybe the Euros go the way the 2018 World Cup went.
Interesting. I say build the team around Julian Weigl and Kai Havertz.
Okay, that works for me. I got no problems with that. I would say the final one that I think can be problemac
in terms of World Cup champions going to the next tournament. I'm just bringing us back to ground level.
Yeah, I appreciate the reset. Is expectation. And that's twofold, because one is just then everybody's looking at you as the favorite. You've got the target on your back. It makes it really hard to repeat. But there is also something to be said for like the past achievement becoming so much pressure that it's impossible to like do your own thing the next time around. And so what I mean is that, say, I know this is like a silly way of explaining it, but so be it, is that like if you ate a blueberry muffin one day, having already made fun of muffins. If you ate a blueberry muffin and had a...
Are you hungry?
No, I don't think so. And if I am, I've got RX bars right across the way. Always on brand. But if you ate like a muffin and then had a really good game, like the next day, if you don't eat that muffin, are you like in your head a little bit about like, oh, I should have done that. Like I had a good game. Like if there is that superstition. And so if you think about that at the next tournament, again, going back to like Germany, I think that was on the Monday show about like how the differences in their preparation in 2014 versus 2018 and how that might have factored into things. That if you're like, oh, last time, like at this time, we had like a peaceful dinner out and instead we're all like sitting around getting a tactical briefing. That's not what we did last time. And if you're constantly referencing what happened before and comparing them, I think it creates an element of this isn't going the way it should be, and it's kind of arbitrary.
So it's basically a version of things weren't as good. Things aren't as good now as they were in the olden days. The good old days.
True.
The good old days of 4 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. But with an element of like that's not even, it's not even just like nostalgia, but it's almost the pressure that brings of like, oh no, like I guess it's more superstition, but just that like, oh no, I didn't do the thing that I was supposed to do. Is that going to mess with the team? Have I blown everything? Have I gotten it wrong? Oh no, am I going to be able to play? Like you can have that sort of like neurotic response that can then lead to on-field issues.
All right.
It's basically thinking of France 2002. In fact, there's a lot of craziness going on there.
Okay, next question. Eggy Gome Des wants to know, in your opinion, who had the best goal celebration of 2018?
Senegal.
Oh, lovely. I didn't think about that.
Yep.
There was a team celebration.
It was.
Yeah.
Several different dancing celebrations.
All right, so that's a straight answer.
Yep.
No other contenders?
There's other contenders. France's like team celebration. I think you talked about it on the World Cup final review show.
Just subs celebrating the goal scorer.
They did not care. And that did also seem to be a trend. That's another trend from this tournament. I've never seen as many subs on the field, active playing field at once. That happened almost every time somebody scored. But with France especially, there was a lot of like combination of goofy dancing and pre-pan celebrations with like the French badge kissing, which really resonates when it's France.
Yep.
But then also the entire team mobbing people.
How about Antoine Griezmann? Do you know about his celebration?
I don't.
So I looked into this. He does like that weird, like, does an L on his head, and he does like...
It's Lindsay Bluth from Arrested Development.
It looks like Lindsay Bluth's chicken dance from Arrested Development, but it's actually from Fortnite.
That's what I thought it was?
So I read up on this morning. It is, apparently when you're playing Fortnite, there are like emotes you can do that are like almost like FIFA goal celebrations. If you do the correct buttons, they do a thing. One of those things is you do an L with your hand, and that you do that same Griezmann dance, and it means you're saying to an opponent, take the loss, take the loss.
Oh, really?
That's what Griezmann is doing. It's actually quite an aggressive goal celebration.
That is a very aggressive goal celebration.
He's saying take the loss.
Because I have not played Fortnite. I have watched a friend play Fortnite. Having referenced it earlier, I should say that the only other thing I could think of when it came to like zones where you're allowed to be slowly decreasing was Battle Royale. That didn't seem like a very great reference. But I had heard it as being like a way that you can, if you've like built yourself into a fortress and you're waiting, you're just sort of like, that's the way you show, like, I'm bored, I'm just doing what I can. But that one I like a lot more. It's more intimidating and it's more in your face.
Apparently he is a, prolific Fortnite player, because there was the Benjamin Mendy social media thing of caught Griezmann asleep because he was Fortniting too much. I also like Mbappe's celebration.
The slide?
What I like the most about it is he keeps doing celebrations where he'll slide and put his like arms under his armpits. You likened it to Superstar.
Mary Catherine Gallagher? Yep.
I don't think he smells his hands afterwards.
That's Yogi Lowe's domain.
But I kept liking that he was almost doing this like super cool guy thing, but he would never get to finish it because then all his team would come and mob him before he came to full rest.
My only
wonderful.
I love that one. My only hesitation is that when I went to find a photo to juxtapose against Mary Catherine Gallagher doing it, he's been doing that one for a while, so I didn't know if that was allowed. Is that allowed if it's like a pre-existing celebration that we've come to know in the World Cup?
Yeah, that's what the World Cup's all about.
Then that is the one. That's the image that's probably going to stand out as that slide.
How about the double eagle celebration?
Oh, yes, of course.
Granit Xhaka and Xherdan Shaqiri, after scoring against Serbia, for reasons we've gone into before, geopolitical reasons, did the Albania flag celebration.
Yep.
That was intense and very memorable.
That was pretty great. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Similarly, Vida shouting for Ukraine after scoring against Russia. How about that?
I can't believe how much I love Domagoj Vida coming out of this tournament.
And even better, maybe my favourite because of what he did on social media afterwards, Michy Batshuayi, after somebody else had scored for Belgium.
Oh, the post kick?
He blasted the ball into the post. It hit him in the face. And then later he said, I knew I'd be on trouble when I opened Twitter.
I think you left out a couple expletives. But
deliberately
Then I just enjoyed how much that kept going. It's what made me kind of start to love Belgium, because then I think Axel Witsel posted a photo of Batshuayi like leaning up against the post with a caption of like it's all good now, they're friends. And Batshuayi then responded to that and was like
it was like some heart
loves with like hearts or something like that. Yeah.
So lots of memorable goal celebrations at the 2018 World Cup. Ready for the final question?
I am.
It's from Anthony Phillips. Anthony Phillips wants to know, why does it seem as though teams at the World Cup have a better chance of scoring off of corners or set plays than club teams?
Sure. I think I have an answer for this, and I think it goes back all the way back to like the disagreement that you and I had when we were doing our draft for the Athletic about like who should manage the team. Do you remember this?
Vaguely.
And my argument was Ancelotti, yours was Zidane, I think. Yeah. And I was saying like the reason for it being that I think in the World Cup you can't have you don't have as much time as a team, right? Obviously. So go to Jurgen Klopp, for example. Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool has all the time in the world to get everybody on board, to get everybody playing the same system, to get everybody buying into it.
To do like his gegenpressing.
You don't have that with a World Cup team, with a national team. You've got a couple weeks here and there spread out, and then in the lead up to the World Cup, you've got 2-3 weeks, probably 3 weeks. But That's not enough time to get everybody understand how to gegenpress, how to hunt in packs, how to do this. So you get the fundamentals of a system down and a couple maybe alternatives if you need to adapt. But the thing you really can focus on, the thing that you can really design up plays and get everybody on board is set pieces. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that you can diagram out and plan for. And I'll say, it feels like that is another trend from this tournament, is teams really diagramming set pieces.
Oh, we should have had that as one of our tactical trends, right, from the earlier question. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's part of it, is that when you are a team and it's basically like, all right, like we're going to do 4-2-3-1, you're going to do this, you're going to do this is how we're going to play. You can get everybody on board, everybody kind of understands, or everybody theoretically understands. Mm-hmm. But the set piece is where you can really have them running into specific places, and in a couple rounds of practice, they can learn how to do that every single time.
I would double down on that as well by saying that, say Jurgen Klopp does the gegenpressing thing over the course of a season. Mm-hmm. When Liverpool come up against an opponent, like say a few months into the season, that opponent can go back and watch tons and tons of games, and they can try and see what Liverpool are doing, right? And vice versa. At the World Cup, when you go out for your first group stage game, a lot of what you're doing can be kind of secret. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is the reason some of these set plays are potentially more successful is that you've practiced them in camp in secret. You might have just trialed them in a couple of friendlies, but they're not widely known. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you take the opposition by surprise the first time you run it. Yeah. And I think the best example of this is the free kicks, the set pieces, the corner kicks that England kept scoring from. You notice them get less effective as the tournament went on because teams were more ready for them. Yeah. Right? And I think that's a big, the element of surprise and novelty and the other team not being prepared for it, but you being prepared for it, is a reason that maybe the set pieces work better at the World Cup than during a regular, say, Premier League season.
And the thing that makes me really happy about that fact is that you hear the stories, you read the histories of the World Cup from decades ago, and it was these teams that people literally knew nothing about. You couldn't watch certain Soviet era teams.
No footage.
Behind the wall, you didn't know what was happening. So suddenly this team would just be unleashed upon the world, and you would have to figure out how to deal with them. And sometimes you could, and sometimes you couldn't. But I think that's kind of gone away as it's become more global, and you don't have to rely on your country's talent pool. You can sign players from South America and Africa and Asia and Europe and wherever else. I mean, probably North America. And you can go that route. It allows for a greater familiarity. But I feel like maybe the set piece is the one thing that remains of that is a thing that it's no longer Holland's total football. It's not a whole team-wide, game-wide approach, but it is these little moments that you can't really plan for until you're in the moment.
There you go. That's a great
answer.
It. All right, so thank you to everybody who sent us questions. Thank you to especially the people whose questions we answered, because those are our favourite questions. Mm-hmm. Apologies if your question did not make the cut. If you have questions for the Total Soccer Show, please ask them at totalsoccershow.com/questions. We'll be doing lots of listener question shows all the time. We usually do at least one a week, right? And now the World Cup is going to be soon in the rearview mirror. It quickly fades, right?
It does.
We're talking transfer rumours soon. We'll be answering questions about all kinds of soccer things. Also worth noting, if you subscribe to the show at totalsoccershow.com/join, $10 a month or more subscribers, we guarantee to answer one listener question per month.
That we do, my friend. That we do.
Final plug for our tour, Taylor.
Plug away.
We are heading out to Omaha on Tuesday. Probably, as you hear this, we might be in the air on Tuesday. Please come and see us in Omaha, Nebraska, or in Kansas City, Missouri, or later on in Richmond, Virginia Beach, Cincinnati, Chicago, Columbus, or Atlanta. WorldCupComedyTour.com to get your tickets.
That's right, because the ideal scenario would be that these shows sell out, as opposed to, say, don't sell out, or maybe don't have anybody there. We don't want that. we don't want 0 people in attendance. That would be bad.
We want to be sellouts.
Yeah, I'm not a live performer by trade or anything, but from what I understand, having 0 people in attendance is bad.
That's going to be part of the thrill of coming to see us, is that we're not live performers by trade. It could go hilariously wrong.
Oh, boy.
It won't. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We basically know what we're doing. Right?
Basically, more or less.
All right. WorldCupComedyTour.com for a real live high-wire act. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to answer World Cup listener questions with me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Please stick with us for lots more Total Soccer Show.